Why did you keep the heads? When did you cut them off, and why did you keep them?
Something out of my childhood. I could put it on an incident. I mean, my father chopping the heads off of our 2 pet chickens and my mother insisting that I eat them for dinner. We could say it was something that simple. I don't think it was.
Welcome everyone. Today we will be discussing the Ogre of Aptos, or as most commonly known, Ed Kemper, the co-ed killer. Ed Kemper was born on December 18th, 1948. He was the middle child and was the only son of Clarnell and Ed Kemper Jr. Ed Kemper Jr. was a veteran of World War II, and after he returned home, he would actually be an electrician. And his estranged wife would often berate him for having such a menial job. A lot of the actions of how she treated Ed's father would eventually result in them separating. And because Ed resembled so much of his father, she would constantly berate and put him down. Ed Kemper would later sit there and testify that at one time, while eavesdropping between an argument between his mother and father, Clarnell, his mother, would say that she refused to give him affection because she would turn him gay. A lot of Ed Kemper's sisters would sit there and tease him because he had an infatuation with his teacher. But they would also say that Ed had a very dark fantasies about different things. On one occasion, his sister had said, "If you like your teacher so much, why don't you sit there and kiss her?" To which Ed Kemper would reply, "If I would have to kiss her, she would have to be dead." As Kemper sat there and lived with his maternal grandparents, Clarnell, his mother, would make him sleep in the cellar of the basement because she would often say that if he was left unsupervised, he would not only assault but also sit there and grape his sisters. His sisters would also come out and say that he would have very dark practices with their dolls, many of which he would sit there and remove the heads and hands of the dolls. And Ed Kemper would later testify at an early age he would sneak out at night and use his grandfather's bayonet and go and actually slaughter small animals, starting with cats. He would sit there and actually buried one alive, and when it had actually died, he brought it back to cut off the head and put it on a stick. On August 27th, 1964, Ed was sitting in the kitchen with his grandmother, and she would often berate him just as much as his mother would. And Ed would sit there and say that he had picked up a rifle that his grandfather had gotten him a year earlier, and she would sit there and say, "Do not kill the birds," to which Ed would turn around and he would shoot his grandmother in the head. He then would sit there and take her up into the bedroom. And later, when his grandfather returned home, he stated that he had to kill his grandfather because he didn't want his grandfather to walk in and see the scene of his wife being shot, so he shot him in the head. It was at this point he would sit there and spend most of his life in a psychiatric treatment. They realized that Kemper was a very intelligent man, borderline genius IQ, and some would say he was a model citizen and would actually have a lot more freedom than most inmates. And on December 18th, 1969, on his 21st birthday, they would actually release him from the psychiatric center under the premise that he would not live or be around his mother because a lot of his anger and aggression were stemmed from the treatment of his mother. But because of the lack of assistance, Ed Kemper was forced to live with his mother. And this is where things got much, much worse. Stay tuned for part 2.